Namaste, everyone. It is me, Nina Sachs from Yoga Awakening Africa. I am excited to be chatting with Lynne today. Lynne and me, we go back like, I don't know, 20 odd years, nearly 20 years now, when our yoga journey kind of paths crossed. And I just thought it would be so lovely to have a chat with you today, Lynne, to kind of like reminisce about like the start of like your yoga journey, how our lives intertwined, kind of like where that was and how special our little place was where we met, and kind of like how your yoga and your whole journey has evolved from there. Does that sound good to you?
Yes, that sounds great. Thanks so much for having me and inviting me on today.
Oh, love it, Lynne. Love it. All right. So, Lynne, why don't you just start off with telling everyone kind of like how your yoga journey began, and then I might just interrupt every now and then to put my two
Okay.
cents worth in. How does that sound?
Well, that sounds very much like you, so that's fine. I started yoga at a very, very interesting time. It was way back in the 1980s. And those were the days of wearing leotards and tights. I'm sure none of you can imagine that today. It was hilarious. But anyway, I started with Iyengar Yoga. And I studied with our younger teachers for about 20 years. And it was a fabulous time in Cape Town because Iyengar was just coming in with all the teachings, and the teachers had come directly from Poon. They'd been taught by Iyengar, many of them. We had lots of workshops, and it was very intense physical yoga where we really learnt how to use our bodies and to get into classical yoga postures. So it was a wonderful basis for what came afterwards in my yoga practice. And I really enjoyed doing that type of yoga. And then as time went by, various things changed and happened. And I ended up at Shanti Cottage, which was where I met you in Muizenberg. And there we had the most fabulous teacher, Yoga Spijker, who had been at the ashram in Rondebosch for many years and studied and had a very deep knowledge, not only of the asanas, but also the yoga philosophy. And I was introduced for the first time to actually incorporating breathing into yoga. And in the beginning, I found it very difficult because I also couldn't understand. They didn't correct poses, they didn't instruct you what to do. It was much more flexible than I'd been used to. And this didn't gel well with my A-type personality because I wanted to know, how do you do the posture? And I very gradually accepted that yoga was actually about surrendering and accepting and doing what your body feels comfortable with. So I began to really enjoy my classes and later on teaching at Shanti Cottage. And Yoga then said, what about this teacher's training college that they're doing at the ashram? And I said, oh, I don't really want to be a teacher. I've never wanted to be a teacher. But I read the program and every subject was so interesting. So I said, I'll do it for personal growth. So
Mm-hmm.
I did the course, as you know, you'd done it the year before me, and which you were 20 years ago now, mine was 19. And we went in depth into all the various areas and the actual 8 limbs of yoga. And what I found so interesting was I'd never heard of the 8 limbs, the actual, really, the Ashtanga and the proper 8 limbs. And I realized that actually, wow, I'd been developing all these things without even knowing it, and how one limb grew and then the other started growing as well. So that was very enlightening. And I realized this was a very, very interesting and different thing happening to me. And I actually remember at the ashram during the teacher's training course, I remember the exact posture, the teacher, and everything. When the teacher said, as you breathe out, move down, and as you breathe in, move up. And I suddenly clicked that yoga was really breath expressed as movement. And there was a totally different feeling. Yoga wasn't about doing something, it was about experiencing something. And that was then I absolutely loved yoga. But I still was determined not to teach. And I was very lucky in that my next door neighbor had just retired. And she came to my door and she said, well, you've done the course now. I need things to do. I'm going to come to yoga classes. So I was very hesitant, but I got another friend involved and we started teaching. I started teaching and never looked back from there.
Oh, love it, Lynn. There's so much that you've like touched on there that I want to explore and delve into a little. I think the first little bit, kind of like what I remember about you and Shanti Cottage, which was just the most, like it was, I think for me, it was a perfect place to start my yoga journey on because it was so encompassing and welcoming. I think maybe if I would have tried a different style of something or been somewhere else, I don't think yoga would have clawed onto me as much as it did, because kind of like, you know, how the saying goes, you know, when the students write, the teacher will appear. And that's really what it was for me, because Yoga was such an inspirational person. She was quite a dynamic force as well. Like she got us to do yoga teacher training. We didn't want to be yoga teachers. But she just did it so subtly. So kind of like there was always the intention behind it, but without like much force or what's the word that I'm looking for? Like with not much force. I think that's what it is. Like it would always be suggestions, yes. And you think about it, and it would be okay. Yes. Yeah, well, that's quite a clever suggestion. And just bringing it back to you, Lynn. I remember when, like, the first time I was in a class with you, and we're all doing kind of like our warrior twos and our trikonasana and looking like we do, and there's Lynn, and she's just in this most magnificent, posture, holding it beautifully, and I was just like, you always say we mustn't be competitive in yoga and be like, but I want to look like her. She's got it. And I think that's where like this whole precision of the Iyengar is really, really helpful. It really does get you in your body and understand your body and connect with your body. And then, like you said, but the breath is so powerful. One of my teachers was saying, like, there's breath, like energy can move in 3 ways: through movement, through breath, and through sound. And I think sometimes when we tap into the breath, we can really get a lot of energy releasing through the body. And I love how you said, like, it's kind of like the missing piece, kind of, or one of the puzzle pieces came together at Shanti Cottage with yoga with regards to like the breath and movement.
Yes, absolutely. And also the fact that the teacher's experience isn't the student's experience. You've got to learn how to put into words, create the atmosphere and the context for them developing their own way of doing yoga, and so that they benefit from it. And I also, now that I teach older students, you have to be very aware of that. I don't actually see myself as a teacher, but as a guide. I'm guiding them into an experience. And you have to put yourself in that person's body and, then do the right things for them. I always tell them everything they must do must be of benefit for their bodies. Because otherwise, why are you doing it?
Exactly. It's linked so beautifully to the teachings of Jessica Cha, where it's kind of like, you need to create yoga for your specific body, for a specific person. So yes, we can all be in a class together and we can all do a cat stretch together or whatever the posture is, but it needs to be tailored for you and your condition. And I think that's what you just speak so eloquently to there is.
Yes, because if you think back, it was always a guru and a disciple. Yoga was taught individually, not in groups. So I keep my classes very small so that each student does get individual attention, and I also know them all very well. They've been with me. My first student who started me off is still with me 19 years later. So we've all grown old together and developed together, evolved together. But what I wanted to tell you was about how I ended up teaching over 60s.
Yes.
I was going to
I'm
visit
just
my
going to
daughter.
interject quickly because
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
so many people that I get emails from or calls from that say, you know, I'm elderly. Can I do yoga? You know, and I think it's one of those things that, especially like on social media, you always see like the pretty young girls, you know, in their tops or whatnot, you know, doing the yoga. And I think often people in the kind of like the wiser generation, I like to call them, who have maybe not done yoga before.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden realize there's something more. Okay, so yes, please go into that.
You see, the something more is finding the right teacher. So you've got to try out, to all of us, whatever age you are, and you know, find the right teacher. Try out a few classes. If it doesn't gel with you, it's not for you. But what had happened was I was going to Calgary in 2014, and Swami Vidyananda said to me, did I realize that Swami Shivananda had sent Swami Radha out to Canada in the 1960s to form an ashram? And I'd never heard of Swami Radha, went to investigate a bit, and I saw the most beautiful ashram had been established in Kootenay Bay in British Columbia. Unfortunately, I never got up to the ashram, but it's on my bucket list. Even if I'm 80, I'm going to try and get there. Because after this, have you ever Googled Yashodhara Ashram?
I haven't.
Please, you must do it. It's a temple of light created like a flower. And it's got all windows around it. And it looks out onto this beautiful lake. And of course, in winter, you have the snow falling. And in summer, you have all the beautiful summer weather around you. So it's a stunning ashram, and it's mainly women that run the ashram and that teach in the ashram. And they have lots of outreach programs and retreats. But anyway, to get back to that, so I Google it, and I realize I can't go there because I'm going to Calgary in Alberta. But I contacted a teacher in Calgary and get such a warm response. It was wonderful. They couldn't wait to meet me and see me. But that was the over 60s class. So I walk into this class. I've never met a more active, happy bunch. About 20 of them who were regular practitioners of yoga and had also been doing it for many years, ranging up till, late 80s. So I settled into the class. I subsequently went back quite a few times, and I went in subsequent years as well, and made a lot of very good friends there. So, of course, when I came back, I thought, this is a brilliant idea. My students had been aging, and I was aging. What about starting classes dedicated to over 60s who have very specific problems, as you know? I mean, you can have arthritis, all different heart ailments and bone problems, etc. So that is what I did. And it's worked brilliantly because I think that age group actually is a forgotten age group, as you've just said. Who's going to go to a class full of mixed different levels when you've never done yoga before and you are a bit stiff and your body doesn't work that well? So what we do is we do a lot of warming up. So we start with like fingers and toes, shoulders. Before we do, the posture would only come at the end of the class. We'd first work our way up towards the posture, thinking about which parts of the body are going to be used when we're doing that posture. And I also do, here again comes our influence that we had in 2008 from Swami Pragamurti when we learned the Yoga Nidra training. Bringing at least 15 minutes of that slow, relaxing, very calming, because a lot of people who are older, you think it's golden years, but there's a lot of stresses and strains on people, demands on people as they age. So that's where I've ended up. And it's the most worthwhile teaching, honestly. They're so appreciative of everything we do.
I'm sure it is. I mean, my parents are retired now. So kind of like also over 60, 65, and they just seem like they're more busy than they are now than they were when they had us kids, you know, to schlep around here, there, and everywhere. Like every time I phone them, there's always something happening, or, you know, so like you say, you know, that 15 minutes of yoga nidra at the end of a class, just to relax the mind and step into it, is so important, no matter what age or level or space you're in. And I think what you also speak so beautifully too is this idea that there's always a sense of evolution. Like, you know, when we were, you know, when you started Iyengar, when we met at Shanti Cottage, it's kind of like as soon as you get into yoga, you realize that you're not just learning something and then you've learned it and then you kind of go to the next thing, like school. You know, we get past preschool, then we get past, you know, primary school, then we get to high school, then maybe, you know, you go to college or varsity. Like there's all these levels, but with yoga it just seems like, you know, you learn something and then you're interested in something else and it grows from there, and then it takes you into, you know, Calgary to explore and meet other people there, and then it takes you into you know, teaching yoga to over 60s. And I think that's the beauty of yoga. Like it's just continually evolving us as humans into like the next version of ourselves. I don't think I've ever actually met a yoga teacher who's done like a 200-hour teacher training or whatever, and that's it. Like I think there's, you know, they're always going to more workshops or reading more books or trying something new or different. I don't think I've ever met a person, and I think that is like the beauty of yoga. Like it's just something in the philosophy, you know, always wants to make us learn or evolve and grow.
Exactly. It's like you're always a beginner. That's how I feel, because you always because it's an experience. The experience is going to be different from your what happened to you emotionally, physically, medically. All those things are going to make a difference to how you actually experience the class on any given day, because you know, even the props that you may use will be different. If your shoulders are tight, you're going to need a cushion. So I think the way I like to be taught, and it's the way you teach, which is why I like coming to classes. I wish you'd be here and do more of them. Is that everything must be in your own timing, especially your movements and your breath. Because with beginner students, they want to do the thing as the teacher's demonstrating it, or as the person in front of them is doing it. And I always tell them, you've all got different bodies, so you're all going to look different in the posture. And this is why the Iyengar training was a very good one, because we used a lot of props then. We used to hang upside down in ropes. We bent backwards over high bridges. We overcame fears. We did all kinds of things. And it was a wonderful training in what you can, how you can adapt. And I think that's been the most useful also with dealing with people who perhaps stiffer or in pain or have problems.
And I also kind of like love what you're saying, Lynne, in the sense that, like, you know, not to be attached to like one school of yoga either, like to be really like to acknowledge and appreciate the beauty of the learnings from whatever teacher, whatever school, whatever lineage, because it's all coming on our journey at the right time for us. I don't think you would have ever regretted any training or learning or course that you've done on your journey to get you to where you are.
Absolutely, because Swami Parvati used to always say, there's all these paths that are leading to the path of yoga, and there's no lesser or better or mediocre one. Everyone is helping you onto your own path where you'll find your niche. And I think that's so true. But I'd like to just also acknowledge, you know, do you remember Ivan, who came to help us with speech? Was he around when you were at the ashram, when you were doing your course?
He was.
I think he must have been an actor.
Oh, he was an actor.
Because he came to give us a class on how to use your voice during a class. And I found that was such a helpful thing because the tone and the words that you use are so important. You've got to be very aware of it. And I also realized that a yoga teacher's got to speak a lot because we're always speaking. So that was interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And I think maybe that's why I love doing these interviews, because I'm not teaching that much anymore. So like the this aspect of like, not teaching in the mornings and the evenings, now all of a sudden, like after pretty much 50 years of doing this, like now I need to speak. Words need to come out. But
Exactly.
it's so like we forget the impact that our words have, and the tone of our voice, and there's so much also that's hidden beneath the words, when we speaking in everyday life. But obviously we're talking about yoga now, teaching a yoga class, that I think it's really important to be very in tune and in a relaxed state yourself before you're teaching a class, so that you can connect with your students and from a deeper level and hear what it is that they're needing, and be willing to adapt a class if need be.
So true. I always start by thinking, let me give my students what they need today. Because everyone, as they come in, sometimes they say something and you suddenly switch your whole class around and you change it. And that's so important to be able to adapt. You can't have a rigid program. Perhaps with younger, flexible students, it's fine. But you've got to think again of the benefits for the person on that day.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's also where new teachers maybe struggle a little, who haven't had the experience of kind of like years of teaching, and all of a sudden thrown in with this person, and how can I quickly adapt my class to make sure that it's comfortable for everyone and everyone gets something out. So it just takes time to evolve those skills. It's not like you're going to learn that on the next teacher training you go on. It's an evolved skill.
No, absolutely. Swami Parvati used to always say, from certainty comes uncertainty, and from uncertainty comes certainty. And I was very uncertain when I started teaching. In fact, I cringe when I think of the first classes and how I taught. It was so different from how I am now. But, and I also think it's very important not to single somebody out. You must always make somebody feel positive about their bodies. And people are they always, as you say, the competitiveness. Look what she's doing. I can't do that. And that's why even the way the teacher sits, I don't do a lot of sitting or kneeling with my class, because there's a lot of knee and hip problems. And even if they had to see me sitting, then they say, but I can't sit like that. So, they're aware of what they want to do, and perhaps what they're capable of doing. So I think it's very important to notice how you are and how you're moving. And it's a lot harder to teach people who aren't as flexible, obviously. So you have to put a bit of more thought into it. But it does help that I'm also getting older, although I must say that yoga has kept me so flexible. I hope I'm going to be one of like Jaya and Yogesh at 90, Yogesh still doing headstands and handstands.
Yeah. Well, you're looking absolutely stunning, Lynn. So you're definitely on the way, and whatever you're doing, keep doing it. But for sure, but that's exactly it with regards to meeting our students where they're at, being an inspiration, but not kind of like being the show off. And sometimes it is hard, especially when you come from a background like with Iyengar, where you are beautifully open and postures come easily because your body, well, you've been doing yoga for I don't even know how many years now. I don't know what it is.
Oh gosh, 40 years,
40 years. So you kind of like the body is open, and it's very difficult, like you say, if you've got a brand new person coming in and they see you, they might be a little younger than you, and they see
Yes.
how beautiful, this person's able to do the postures. It can be sometimes intimidating, but it can also be super inspiring if it's done in the right way.
Yes. And also what's quite nice is I have actually 3 older male students in my class, which is
Wow.
pretty unusual for men. And they're the most wonderful inspiration, because one of them the other day, he was going out of class and said, "Oh, I've got to go to work now." So I said, "Oh, what's going on?" So he said, "No, I was asked to do a job, but I said, yoga comes first. I'll go to my class." I thought, how often do you get that? I mean, that was such a rewarding comment,
So it really, really is. I absolutely love that, because so often we'll put other things or other people before what we know is going to nourish us and feed us. And it's so lovely when someone, no matter what age they are, they realize, like, this is a practice that I need to do for me. If it is your 5 or 10 minutes, breathing in the morning, or a meditation, or if it's eating something that is nourishing, whatever is that you need to keep your cup full. If you put that before anyone else wants something from you, I think you're able to give so much more of yourself in a much more relaxed and easeful manner. And I love that story.
Yeah. And of course, the male energy in the class is such fun. We have a lot of laughing, because you'll see one doing a brilliant balance, and then you look, oh, his legs against the wall. And, and there's always a joke or two. And at the end of the class, they never want to go home. They always want to stay longer.
And I think that's the other thing, like, yoga, it's lovely to have, the depth and, where you can go quite deep with the yoga. But I think there's also like this beauty in the lightness when there's laughter, and we can connect with everyone else in the class. And, we can laugh about ourselves. We don't take ourselves too seriously, because I think in the world we do, take ourselves quite seriously with, like, whatever our job is, or raising kids, or whatever the story is. And sometimes just having that lightheartedness can again be a way of releasing energy and just having a chance to connect with people.
Absolutely. That's so true what you say, because the main problem is that people are so used to being judged and tested and doing their best and being the best, that it's very difficult in a yoga class for a very active person to slow down. It's actually very much harder. And to surrender to what's happening, because they tend to resist. And then when they get that switch that comes on, suddenly they start not worrying what anybody else is doing. And like today, for example, I just had a class, and somebody I know has a groin strain. And so she said, "Oh, I didn't do as many as you were doing." And I said, "No, I'm only too happy to see that, because you're really doing yoga. Yoga is about listening to your body and doing what's good for you." So I encourage that.
I love that, Lynn. And I think that is so important. That's pretty much my philosophy and motto when I'm teaching as well, which, it's just it's your body, you need to do it. And the more you can tap into what your body is needing, and listening very intuitively, the better it is for you, for everyone, actually.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that's why I like coming to your classes, because there's always a lot of laughing going on as well. Excellent.
Brilliant. So kind of like, Lynn, I suppose to wrap up in a sense, kind of like your evolution through yoga, from like Iyengar Yoga to kind of like deeper Hatha Yoga at Shanti Cottage with the ashram, a lot of Satyananda work as well with Swami Pragyamurti, and then delving into kind of like exploring yoga for over 60s. Have I got that right?
Exactly. It's a lifetime
of yoga. Lynn, it is always so delightful to see you. You're always such a spark of beauty and radiance. So what are your kind of like plans this year? Are you heading back to Calgary this year? Or
no, I don't think so. We went last year. So we'll just continue with our yoga classes and see what unfolds.
Beautiful, lovely, lovely, lovely. And are you taking any new people into your classes or not really? Is it?
Not really, because of this. I only take about 5 that sometimes stretch to 6. And they've all been with me for so long, there are very rarely any spaces left until they move away to a retirement village or something. And, most people these days, I think even into their 80s, are so active and busy and doing things. It's wonderful to see, and it's very inspirational. It's certainly, age is just a number, as my mom always used to say, because they are really doing amazing things with their bodies.
I love what you say with regards to like age is just a number, because you can be 30, 40 and you can be, acting as a traditional 80, 90-year-old, or you can be
Yes.
like Swami or Yogeshwari, Mother Yogeshwari, and doing like handstands and headstands, into her 90s, 80s and 90s.
Exactly.
It really is just a mindset and how we look after our bodies, not just our bodies, but our minds as well, I think. That's the other thing.
Absolutely.
And doing things that spark our spirit. I think that's the other thing. So sometimes I think we can get very body focused. Sometimes we realize we need to like sort out our head and we focus on, okay, getting that right. But I think sometimes we also forget about like what ignites our passion. And like you're saying, like yours is like, working with the over 60s, like there's a passion.
Absolutely. Yes.
When we have all 3 of those in balance, it's great.
Absolutely. No, you couldn't have summed it up better.
Lynne, thank you so much for being here, for doing this interview with me. I know I had to kind of like weasel my way in a little for it has been absolutely delightful.
No, same to you, and hope to see you in Cape Town soon. One of these days.
One of these days.